The Toronto Raptors lose 128 to 111, their 14th straight loss in what could be LeBron James' final trip to a city that he has pretty much owned real estate in for the better part of 20 years. And the Raptors get some fortunate news. Immanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett back in the lineup. Didn't make too much of a difference, but they both had really good performances. Let's take a look at it. This is not going to be a super long live. These these games are starting to drain me out, to be honest. Like watching them over and over. The Raptors did get off to a promising start. And of course, with the gift that the Memphis Grizzlies delivered the Toronto Raptors yesterday, I was like, could the Raptors just win one? You know, there was this game back in Tampa where Kyle Lowry played his final game, and it was against the Lakers, ironically. And I believe it was against LeBron James. And, you know, he kind of went out in a blaze of glory. And I'm like, man, before you shut everyone down, would it be nice to just play spoiler and just win one against the Lakers and then shut everyone down for the season? And it kind of felt like maybe in the first quarter there was a chance that the Raptors would make this really competitive and Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett would just go nuts. And yeah, they didn't play enough to make that big a difference. But hey, if you are a fan of young guys over everything, this is a game for you because Emmanuel Quickly shows out. Really efficient game for him. Grady was fairly efficient. RJ Barrett was super efficient. Both, like all three guys, played roughly on average like 29 minutes between them, and they combined for 66 points, 62 points between the three of them. That's great. Um, yeah, RJ Barrett looked good. We might be on a minutes restriction, ramping up the energy, to get back into shape. But it was good to see him back. And, of course, the devastating loss of his brother. Then you consider the devastating loss of Emmanuel Quickley's uncle. And you just think to yourself, man, like these guys need this. Basketball is a sanctuary and a bit of an escape for people who love it. And it was good to see them back. In terms of, guys off the bench, man, I really loved what I saw from Mohamedou Gay today. Like he was just explosive. I don't know how he got 5 turnovers. I don't know how Jordan Nwora got 4 turnovers, but God bless him. This bench is, not it. And obviously with Scottie out, with Jakob out, with free agency money and everything that is still pending for the Raptors, with draft picks pending, a lot of these depth charts, pieces that are currently playing minutes won't be playing minutes for you next year. Kobe Simmons is not going to be playing minutes for you next year. Javon Freeman Liberty probably not going to be playing minutes for you next year. Garrett Temple and Mohamedou Gay and, Jalen McDaniels, these guys are probably not going to be playing minutes for you next year. So, the Raptors have a lot of decisions to make. And, the easiest decisions are, to cut some of these guys loose. But yeah, I thought Grady was cool. There was a really, really cool play where Kelly Olynyk comes down the paint, and Olynyk was the assist man again. Doing a lot early on, but yeah, I think he had this floater from the right side. It's the right side. It was the right side, and it was like over the backboard. I don't know. Interesting touch. Interesting shot. Bruce Brown was rough. Rough to say the least. Yeah, I'm struggling to see like how this team is ever supposed to win another game. Honestly, I know look, you see 28 points, and there was a comment from Jack Armstrong which really grinded my gears today, in which he said, that we talk about the face of the team and stuff, and he wouldn't be surprised to see RJ Barrett emerge as that guy next year. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but I know what he's trying to say without trying to say it. And it's just such weirdness, that a guy has a nice game like this and you just can't leave a good thing alone. You have to make something more out of it. And it's weird to me. It's weird to me because there's nobody who's watching these games and watching RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley seeing franchise player in either one of these guys. They are supporting players. Hopefully they can be really good supporting players. Hopefully they're the game can round out for them. Hopefully they can both become positive contributors on the defensive end next year. And yeah, but I don't think either one of these guys are superstars. If these guys are your best players, if either of these guys are your franchise guy, you're going nowhere. Absolutely. These are, to put this into complete context, these guys are on the same level as a D'Angelo Russell right now. A D'Angelo Russell or a Kyle Kuzma is not someone that you build a franchise around. Guys you build the franchise around: Steph Curry, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, guys like that. Scottie is much closer to that than any of these guys have probably ever been, they will ever be. So, there's really no need to go there if you're Jack Armstrong. And I just found that was a really annoying comment. And it's not the first time he's made comments like that. He seems to always take a dig, whether intentionally or not, whether subconsciously or not. I don't know if he's drunk doing half of these shows that he's doing. But the truth is, Jack's a affable and very nice guy, and a lot of people like him. But he has these really, really strange ideas about, you know, um, Fred, Pascal, Scottie, etc. And he's expressed them in his own weirdo way. And, if he's going to do the same thing with RJ Barrett, I think it's just a really toxic trait. Personally, that's just my opinion. I've met him many times. Very nice guy, very lovely, very, nice and all that stuff, but just has some really, really weird ideas that he expresses on air sometimes. And I think RJ Barrett being, the face of your franchise is one of the weirdest things. I think you go write that on a Knicks forum and tell me what they say to you. It's just so strange. And unfortunately, making that comment now provokes other people to have to respond to it. And again, if I've misunderstood that, I apologize, but I don't think I did. And I think he's been doing it for a long time. I do say this could have been LeBron James's final trip to the North. It's true. He only takes one trip to the North each year with, the opposing team. And next year, if he's playing next year, and of course, he might play next year, he probably will play next year, but he could be injured. So this very well could have been the last time you saw LeBron James play in Toronto. It's possible. And boy, did ticket prices reflect it. At what point are ticket prices going to come down? Because I gotta be honest, I was looking at Ticketmaster today. I was just I was curious. I'm like, okay, let me just explore the idea that maybe, since the Raptors season is in such a dump, that maybe there would be like $120 ticket somewhere. No, I saw a $192 ticket. I saw a $350 ticket. I saw a $7,000 ticket that was courtside. It was on resale. Who is paying for these? Someone apparently with a lot more money than me. But yeah, it was interesting. Anthony Davis was a force. It started early, somewhat efficient night. Didn't really make his free throws, but 21 points, 12 rebounds, 28 minutes. 5 turnovers. Not a brilliant game for him by his standards. LeBron James, clearly, he was the best player on the court for sure. 23 points, 9 assists, 4 rebounds. And D'Angelo Russell, he put up 25. And he had 7 threes, 7 for 14, so he shot 50% from 3. Here's a really fun, weird fact. Do you know the Raptors are the second worst free throw shooting team in the league? I wonder why. And today they shoot 71% from the free throw line. And that just happens so often. And I don't know, previously it was like, oh, well, it's because, it's because of Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl's not a good free throw shooter. Jakob Poeltl's not been playing for a really long time, and you continue to miss free throws. And so tonight it was Garrett Temple missing 2. Garrett Temple with 28 minutes played. Weird. But apparently that's happening now. And RJ Barrett with 3. And yeah, it just seems to happen far too often. I think the Raptors really need to figure this out going into next season because, yeah, that differential between what other teams shoot against you and when you shoot against them, it's really important to win that on something. And the Raptors don't win that on anything. The Raptors' opponents shoot better from the field than they do. The Raptors' opponents shoot better from 3 than they do by 1%. So it's really really difficult to win. Today, the offense looked a little bit better in spurts, especially when RJ Barrett was on the court. A lot of downhill attacking and, getting into the paint and stuff. But I need to remind you, there was a time, I think, when Luke Jackson scored 30 points in a game, right? An NBA game. There was a time when, it was Malachi Flynn. I think he won Rookie of the Month, right, for the Eastern Conference. You remember that? When the Raptors really tore it down? My point is, someone's got to score, okay? Someone's got to score. And far too often we look at a number like 22 points, 24 points, 26 points, and we're like, That's great. When the player scoring the 24, 26, 28 points is Delano Banton or Malachi Flynn, we don't overreact too much. We don't think too much about it. We just think it's a fluky thing or whatever. My internet, I think the internet is going in and out here. I apologize. Rogers is like, hey, we need to devote our internet towards people who are making lives about teams that are winning basketball games. We can't be, devoting our delicate bandwidth to Pensar basketball covering the Toronto Raptors. Yeah, I mean, someone's got to score, is my point, right? And, in games like this, which are like track meets where no one's really caring, no one's really playing defense, you're not really seeing it, right? And that's not to take anything away from Immanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett has been really good in the playoffs, which are high leverage moments. He's had good moments. He can be a part of it. What I'm saying is, don't get too carried away, with other teams, even on our team or other teams. When you see a guy score 23, 24 points, like one-offs, it's not that serious. What is serious is, are you bending the defense? Are you putting pressure on the defense? Are you controlling the game? These things matter so much more than whether or not your shots went in or didn't, because so much of whether your shots went in or not comes down to how the other team is guarding you. Are you getting doubled? Are they game planning for you? Or is it just one of those things where they're just like, okay, let that guy, score. We're just not going to play hard until the fourth quarter, and we're just going to kick this team's ass. So I don't know. A part of me is like, thinking like Cade Cunningham scoring like, I think it was 36 or 40, 36 points yesterday against the Memphis Grizzlies. And it's just like, man, every shot I saw him hit against Memphis, he was shooting, I think it was like he was hitting it over guys like Luke Kennard and, Gigi Jackson and stuff. I'm like, man, these are the same shots I saw him miss against Miami. They're the same shots that I saw him miss earlier in the season against a better team. And so, yeah, I think it just kind of comes down to that. Disappointing commentary. RJ has a list of accolades a mile long and is excellent. Had been excellent the entire time. Here, this guy's comparing him to Malachi Flynn. Your listening comprehension is in the basement of the earth. I never compared him to Malachi Flynn. So don't do that. You're arguing against nothing. I don't know who you think you're arguing against, but you sound real dumb. Averaging like 21, 22 for his entire time, 50% from the field, 40% from three, the entire time in Toronto. Just be grateful. Oh my God. What is wrong with you? Who hurt you? Like, just be grateful. Grateful for what? What are you talking about? No one said anything. Like, why do people get this way? Like, why do people get this way? I'm saying he's not a franchise player. You want to argue he's a franchise player because he's averaging 21 points a game? For real? And he's an ascending shooter. Oh, I was very, very impressed with his shooting today. But like, where does this come from? Capital gains. RJ is still 23 years old. He might not be great right now, but he can improve. Yeah, he can improve. Of course he can improve. He's in his 5th year in the NBA. I think he can be a really solid starter. I think he can be a really solid starter. I think his defense needs to get better. I think his shooting needs to get better. I think he can be a really solid starter. In terms of like what he does for your team, like, I'm sorry, like, it just so happens that there are a lot of guys in the NBA who can put up 21, 22 points on pretty efficient shooting, and they're not superstars. Cade Cunningham is a guy who can put up 22 points easy in his sleep. He's not a superstar. Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson. There's a lot of guys out there who can score like that. What I've been most impressed with RJ is his playmaking in spurts has been good. And that is an important part of this that's going to have to come for him. Reem Israel, you take offense every time someone gives RJ a compliment. Calling someone the face of the team is not a compliment. It is an absurd, it's an absurd thing. Like, You know what? It's ridiculous. You know what? Call in, or you get banned in like a minute. So, you can use the link and actually call in and we can have a conversation about this, or you can go to hell, frankly. Like, I don't appreciate this. Like, you're acting like, like, do you remember like what I said when we traded for RJ Barrett? Like, I have been very complimentary of RJ Barrett. But according to, nut jobs like you, unless someone is willing to say he's going to be a franchise player, they're hating on RJ. And I just don't get it. And it's like, honestly, it's the same energy. I wonder if like every single Fred VanVleet fan just converted their, I don't know, converted their loyalty card, or I guess the question is, where do Pascal Siakam fans and Fred VanVleet fans go now, now that like they're not on this team, and it's like, okay, well, they just switch allegiances and they become RJ Barrett fans. And then it's like, it's unfortunate because RJ Barrett has been really good for the Raptors. He's been really good for the Raptors. He's been better for the Raptors than he was for the Knicks. He's been a better shooter. He's been a better playmaker. He hasn't really been much of a defender for the Raptors, but I think like it's encouraging, and every good thing I've said about this guy just gets miffed, and it gets buried for the one time I say he's not a franchise player. Dude, if you think he's a franchise player, that's on you. That's on you. And don't hold your breath. He's the one calling names, threatening bans. That's what you sound like to me. Why don't you call in? Okay, seriously, your 1 minute's up. Get the fuck out. Ban hammer. Peace. Go fuck yourself. All right. I don't think it's really nice like to come in and try to like act like I'm saying something that I'm not. You're lying. You're straight up lying. If you think I'm taking offense to people making RJ like compliments, you're crazy. Like, how many compliments do I have to give the guy? I said he's much better at shooting. He's taken on a great defensive assignment. He's been awesome in transition. His playmaking is expanding. He's been better. What the fuck do you want from me? Like, what do you want? It's like, it was like the Fred VanVleet thing. Like, last year it was like with Fred VanVleet. It's like, man, he's a really solid defender. He's one of the top 15 point guards in the NBA. He's, he's a really, he's a great rags to riches story. He's a really solid player. He's really worth 22 million. And then his supporters come out and be like, oh, well, if you don't respect him as an all-star. And it's like, I don't see him as an all-star. What the fuck do you want from me? I don't see him as an all-star. I will never see him as an all-star. You know what I mean? Like, you got to stick to your guns with this kind of shit, man. Like, it's like the internet is a weird place. It's a weird place. Everyone's got a voice, right? So whatever. Nevertheless, the Toronto Raptors get out hustled, out muscled, and not a good recipe when you are the less talented team and the other team takes 12 more shots than you. That's usually a recipe to lose games. The Raptors get outshot from three as well, which again has been happening for a while. 41% is absurdly high. Sorry, 44% is absurdly high. Raptors get out assisted, and this is, I think there were a couple times tonight where I felt like guys just held on to the ball too long. Jordan Noir a few times, Bruce Brown a few times, RJ a couple times. So it's just like the Raptors, are going to struggle to win right now because they just don't have enough. They don't have enough talent at the top. And, that's just the truth of it. All right. In all seriousness, Jackson Hayes' dunk was filthy. The between the legs. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, that was a kind of a weird choice in my opinion, in my honest opinion, for a role player. That was a very strange choice. But in his defense, the Lakers were up by like 1 million points at that point, so it didn't really matter. Yeah, with games like this, and I mean, okay, honestly, around the NBA today, do you realize that the Washington Wizards just beat the Giannis and Middleton led Milwaukee Bucks with Brook Lopez? It's the Washington Wizards, dude. The Wizards didn't have Kyle Kuzma. So they basically did it with Jordan Poole. Okay, I don't know why my girlfriend's cat is going insane. Sorry, you have to forgive some meowing in the background there. So the Wizards comfortably, I mean, a lot of things are lining up for the Raptors. So anyway, this game was interesting. It was it's beggars can't be choosers. I'm happy the Raptors are losing because of tanking implications and whatever. Obviously, I would like for these games to be a little bit closer. You may be tempting fate to try and win every single game by like 2 to 3 points, or like lose every single game by 2 to 3 points. So maybe it's fine. I think it's good enough that there are competitive stretches. I just don't think that right now the Raptors can compete on defense. And I think one of the biggest reasons they're unable to compete on defense is because they have no rim protection at all. They give up a ton of points in the paint every single night, 60 plus. Almost every single night you look at 60 plus, 62 points to the Lakers. Guys get behind the defense, guys get over the defense, guys get through the defense, and it's just like it's a layup line. And the Raptors don't really have anything inside that can deter guys from going into the paint. And other than Jakob Poeltl, they really haven't had anything all year. You know, Christian Koloko was out for the entire year. Kelly Olynyk ain't it. Jonte Porter was surprisingly effective in his brief minutes there. But OG Anunoby is not a typical rim protector. Pascal Siakam was a complete Steve on the inside, and he's taken that. He's carried that forward with the Indiana Pacers now. The Raptors really need to look into targeting this somehow in the offseason. A couple things. So this morning I created a live about, the Memphis Grizzlies kind of gifting the Toronto Raptors, or the Detroit Pistons gifting the Toronto Raptors draft seeding. And then we ran through the simulation and we did like 10 rounds or 10 runs through Tankathon, and the Raptors lost the pick like eight times. So yeah, the odds are not great for the Raptors to keep their pick, even if they stay at 6 in terms of their seeding. But one thing I didn't think about was, to those of you who say, oh my God, what would happen if the Raptors gave up their pick? It would be the end of the world because blah, 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 blah. I do want to say I don't think that's necessarily the case. And I'm going to make a case for it. Hold on. So, by all accounts, if the Raptors take a step up next year, more than likely it's going to be in the play-in range. It's not going to be like they're not going to catapult themselves to like first seed or something like that in the Eastern Conference. The Bucks still exist. The Knicks are on the rise. The Sixers will have Embiid and Maxey, and the Pacers have a young core. It's a very good chance you'll be fighting for a play-in spot next year. So chances are, if you convey the pick next year, you're going to convey like a 10th or 11th pick, or maybe 12th pick, 13th pick, something like that. So in order to justify the, oh my God, what if we lose it, we're screwed. If you want to justify that school of thought, here's something worth thinking about. So this is 2025 mock draft. And this is the range in which you'd be picking if you don't give up the pick. So Carter Knox, who's Kevin Knox's younger brother, I mean, if you can sell yourself on this group of players right here, and these numbers may change, right? Right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could go as far down as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You could sell yourself on one of those 6 guys, or that group of 6 being more impressive than the group of 4 or 5 players that you'd be considering at the 6th spot this year. Then you can make a solid case that it makes sense. I'll give you another reason. The Toronto Raptors have actual cap space this summer. they could free up upwards of like 45 million for a big max slot, or even two really big slots if they renounce Bruce Brown and renounce Gary Trent Jr. Like they could really figure it out. Like in terms of like in a big way, they could also make a trade, right? They could take on a contract. Like I don't know. Let's say the Golden State Warriors are like, we're done with Draymond. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying, let's just say they did. Be like, okay, we'll absorb Draymond. Just give us Moses Moody and Trace Jackson Davis, and we'll give you a pick or something. I don't know. Like you become a broker. You can do cool things with your cap space. You don't have to waste it the way that the Houston Rockets did by overpaying other players. Like you can actually just absorb contracts the way that the OKC Thunder have. And that is a unique opportunity which can sometimes net you draft picks as well. And of course, there's the other, option of just outright using the cap space. Like you can actually use cap space to go and sign players. And this level of flexibility becomes highly compromised when you start adding the salary of a top 6 pick, especially if the Raptors move up. So the cap hold of, a first overall pick, it's static. Like, so it's not a cap hold, sorry. The cap hit of a first overall pick, second overall pick, whatever. These amounts are not determined by how good the players are. They are predetermined based on the CBA. So unfortunately, whether the first overall pick is a real first overall pick, like a Yao Ming or a Tim Duncan or a Zion Williamson or someone like that, or if it's not a real first overall pick, like a Kwame Brown or a Michael Olowokandi, they get paid the same. The problem is when you have a guy who's picked top 3 who doesn't work out, it's a double whammy because not only is it a massively wasted opportunity, it's also now a boatload. It's a terrible asset, and it hits your caps, and it's a cap hit, and it's not an easy one to move off of. You consider Marvin Bagley, consider James Wiseman, the number of players who have earned a ton of money as top 3 picks that haven't worked out. And those teams almost always had to dump those guys for next to nothing because, again, they make so much money. Now, typically, the way that I'll say like a young player usually works is like that. They're typically not going to contribute a lot to winning right away, but usually towards the back end of their rookie deal, they start to outperform that contract. And that's the ideal, hopeful thing. Sometimes you have a rare situation where a guy comes out right away and he outperforms it right away, like a LeBron James or a Scottie Barnes, right? But in most cases, you're going to have guys like Grady Dick who are going to barely earn their contract in the first year, and then they're going to start to really outperform it by year 3 and year 4. The problem is the more money you make, the harder it is to outperform your contract, right? So consider the long-term cap implications of, the new CBA building around Scottie. Well, there might be a case to be made that if you can get a better player at 10 or 11 next year, then not only is it better to have the better player, obviously, but it might be better to have the cheaper player. That helps. Do you know what I mean? It's like long term, because you're going to be dealing with Scottie and you're going to be dealing with the first apron, second apron, all that stuff, especially if you're contending in 2-3 years. You have to look at all these things. If you have a player who is making first overall pick, second overall pick, third overall pick money, but they have the talent of like a 10th or 11th overall pick, which is very likely in this draft, that's not to say that that player will be, grossly overpaid or anything. It's just not as great an asset as, let's say, 2025 is super stacked. Having a guy who is actually a 10th, 11th overall type talent making 10th overall type money, because I will tell you that first overall, second overall, third overall pick, these top 3, top 4 picks, their salary is very high, and I think it was like $12 million. Let me just check it. Hold on. Draft pick. Also, worth noting, money matters more when you have it. That makes sense. The Raptors probably won't have cap space next offseason. They will also be extending Scottie Barnes next offseason. Immanuel Quickley's contract will be hitting next offseason. So you really just have one crack at this. You might just have one summer over the next 8 years where you have actual cap space. So there is your glass half full in case you lose the draft pick. Okay. Hold on. Okay, so pull this up here. And this is according to okay. A really big gap between the 10th overall pick and when you compound it over 2, 3, 4 years. Well, yeah, as a team building asset, it makes a whole lot of sense to draft someone 10th who actually has that type of talent. As opposed, and this is always the case for trading down in the draft as well, right? You don't want to reach too much. I'm so curious as to who Bobby thinks the best player in the draft is. I hope you don't mean me. I think you mean Bobby Webster, right? Anyways, Lil John, let's bring you on for 2-3 minutes. What's going on, man?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
How you doing, man?
All right. How are you?
I'm good. I think you're underplaying how much, I think they're gonna package the picks for a player. Like I think that's in play more than just let's go young because they're very, very like the OG trade return kind of indicates that they're trying to compete and kind of just the way that Darko's coaching and with the ownership they seem really inclined to compete and I don't think you're giving enough like thought into them just packaging those picks and other Raptor future picks into like Larry Markkinen. I think that's more in play than just like, hey, we're gonna draft Alex R and hope he turns into, the next big, next great big. I think that's more in play because they really want to compete.
I don't know. I think they'll consider drafts. I think they'll consider the draft.
Yeah, I brought this up like
packaging a whole bunch of picks that people again, like you got to look at the relative value of like how do people what is the value of a draft pick in a draft that other people deem to be a weak draft, right? Like it does lessen it a little bit, right? And so
Yep,
you
it
have to
does.
ask yourself, it's like, would you do a better job of gaining value in drafts? Like when I think about, general managers and when I think about drafts like this, I think of them as this is where you find out who really knows what they're doing when it comes to scouting.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've trusted the Raptor scouting department for forever. I know they've had some mistakes, but even their misses are not really big misses. There's still some good thought behind it. So I just think that this is the type of draft where with 3 draft picks potentially, the Raptors could really, really find a gem here. And you need a gem. You need a gem. You're not contending next year. You have that opportunity. And of course, if you draft a gem, like consider like Jaime Jaquez. Is Jaime Jaquez today or Brandon Pajimski today or Trace Jackson Davis today, are they not worth more than they were worth on draft night? Of course they are. So
Trace for sure, and Brandon for sure. I think Jaime is he got a little overrated. He's like 22.
you
I think
think
he's
he's
older than
worth
Scottie.
less? Well, forget that.
But
You think
as
he's
far as
worth
what you
less
said, yes.
today than he was at the draft?
No. But I
Okay,
don't
so
think it's as
that's
big
what I'm
as
saying. So
not as
the
big as
asset.
what you think. I don't think he's going to be a top 10 player in this draft.
Well, in fairness, he was not supposed to be a top 20 pick. So if you're saying
right.
he's not going to be a top 10 player in this draft and that's your cutoff, I'd say he's outperforming his draft stock. That being said, I feel like some team would probably park at least a first rounder and another young player for him right now. And I don't think that would
Yeah,
have been the case on draft night. So my point is, if you're good at finding players, go find them. If that's what you do, then find them. This is where
yeah,
great GMs and great, talent evaluators and great scouts, this is where they make their money. So I think the Raptors had, a player in mind in the second round. I think they have a player in mind in the top 6, top 7 range. And if that player is on the board, I think they'll take him. And if, perchance that player is off the board, maybe they'll consider trading the pick. But in terms of packaging all the picks and just trading out, like not even giving a thought to like drafting players because they're in some rush to compete, I don't think so. I think they
yeah.
will, like if they were really wanted to compete, they would have done that with Grady. They would have traded that Grady pick because that pick would have been worth something.
Yeah, but remember last year they knew that they were going to rebuild this year. So kind of, and then plus they were, I think that Fred VanVleet, his decision was going to sway which way they went, right?
I think they thought he was coming back for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think everything was predicated on that. I'll close on this. I brought this up before. The Mikal Bridges. I know you're low on him, but he's someone who is just so gettable right now, and
But there's a reason for that.
he is. But
He's been
there's also a reason
awful.
why people were excited about him, and there's also a reason why people thought he was, the new guy. So two things can be true. Like he wasn't that guy, but at the same time, he would look really nice next to Scottie, and he's still pretty young, and he's on a really nice contract. So I feel like he is so gettable right now, and you can package a couple of picks. Like if he's on this team right now,
Hmm.
they can play 500 basketball next year if they do a couple of good free agent signings. Like
I
uh,
just
I
think
don't know
like
if
this goal of getting to being 500, sometimes it can be a little misguided, especially when you're giving up draft picks to do it. Like it's one thing when you use available cap space, like the Houston Rockets did, where the Houston Rockets did not trade Jabari and Jalen and Alprin Şengün and go and make some crazy win now move. They didn't do that. They just used available cap space and they supplemented what they had. They kept all their draft picks. They drafted Amen Thompson. They drafted Cam Whitmore. They keep playing their young players. So the Houston Rockets, in a really weird way, are doing the perfect thing, and I think the Raptors could follow suit. Keep your draft picks. These are very valuable assets, especially in the hands of people that know what they're doing. And this idea and this notion that just keep trying to want to trade these draft picks for Mikal Bridges or whatever, I don't think so, man. I don't think you're there yet. I don't think this team is that close yet. I don't think you're like that one piece away. And I don't think like being 500 is all that it's cracked out to be. Being in the middle is terrible. It's
all
absolutely
right,
horrible.
it is. But so I'm at the point where maybe this is where we disagree with. I'm at the point where I look at RJ as a positive asset
Sure.
now.
He is positive.
So if he's a positive, Quickly's a positive, Scott is positive, Jakob is a positive. Like you're already halfway, like more than halfway there. So
But you're
if you
not
can get
halfway
another,
there, and that's the point because you see, like you
or
could
if
you can say guys are positives, right? Like let me give you an example. Rui Hachimura is a positive. Yuta Watanabe
no,
is a
he's not.
positive. Great Grayson Allen's a positive. Did I just assemble a championship team there though?
But these are young guys who are positive though. Isn't it? These those guys are flat line. No, nothing. I mean, Grayson did get way better, but so um, RJ with a bullet.
Asar Thompson is a positive. Jalen Duren is a positive. You know what I mean? Like okay, those are even younger guys.
Yeah, but they're
And
on the Pistons.
it, I just think that at some point you need to realize that there's a missing piece here that is too big to ignore. And it's very unlikely the guys just step up into a role. Like you're going to have to go find that player. And I feel like when you see star talent, like real star talent, like real superstar type talent, you know. Like
Yeah,
Like
but that goes
you're
back to
watching it.
is that inside this draft? And again, you said you have to go find it,
Maybe.
which is fair.
Maybe,
Go
yo.
find it.
Maybe. But
Maybe
you're
I
talking
know.
about guys being young because they're 24, 25. Yo, there are guys in this draft that are 19 years old. How do you know they don't have it?
I
You
you're
have to
right. It's
project.
there. It's yeah. I'm not. Like I'm not like either way. Like I agree that it's either way right now. Like I agree with you, but I just think this team is like it's not as far as you think. And I think putting an 18 or 19-year-old on this team and crossing your fingers next year, and like if let's just say one of the guys stalls, Scottie gets a little bit better, but not as much as you think next year, and now that player that rookie next year is maybe having some struggles, and now it's all of a sudden you're kind of like, what have we done in the last 2 years? Like there's a potential next year to be in a position where you're kind of like, what have we done? And if you trade those picks, you can feel pretty confident with what happens because
No, I don't feel
Mikal Bridges,
confident
we know
because
what Mikal Bridges is.
but that's the problem, man. Like you're so stuck on this Mikal Bridges thing. Like you got it in your
Well,
head. You're like,
it doesn't have to be Mikal. He's just I'm using him as like the figurehead.
whatever your version of Mikal Bridges is, you have this idea that this sure thing that is for sure, at least a 20-point per game scorer, at least a competent defender, at least in their prime. You think that's a good thing. But here's the point. Like that thing is so fairly valued right now. This is an asset management 101 thing. Like that thing is fairly valued because everyone knows what it is. You didn't have to work for it. It comes ready made, it comes pre-packaged, pre-assembled, right? He is already a made man. So if you've put all this work into developing an asset base of draft picks, and you put all this work into your scouting department and all this investment into bringing in coaches that are really really good at developing guys, why would you now run away from draft picks? That's my point. Like, yes, there's an inherent risk. There's also an inherent risk in Mikal Bridges, bro. You can get injured next year and miss like the next 2 years. Like, it could happen. There's an inherent risk in everything. What I'm saying is you have five, potentially five draft picks over the next 3 years, 2 years that are of some consequence, including this Detroit pick. And you could make even one of them into an all-star level player. You have already done
That's
more
just
with that draft pick than you're going to do trading for Mikal Bridges because he's not an all-star.
yeah, but again, goes back to this draft. The chances of you getting an all-star in this year's draft is a lot lower.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
We've
That's
been
my
told
point. Like,
that's
how do you know? You can't
just a bad
say
draft.
that. Like, I can't say that. You can't say that unless you're God. You can't say that. You can't say that any more than you can say that Victor Wembanyama is going to have a healthy career or that Scottie Barnes is going to be a superstar. The more data you have, the better. I'm willing to bet my life that you don't have all the data on all these players. I mean, first of all, I don't even have it. Most of these
Yeah, I
players
know
are
that.
fucking foreign. Like
I
what?
know that.
How do you know that Risa Shea or Nikola Topic won't be all stars? How do you know that?
Yeah, we don't know that.
Well, and that's the point. So anyone who's telling you they know that they're gonna be is fucking full of shit. But anyone who's telling you they know that they're not is also full of shit. But guess what? You and I are not like sitting there making millions of dollars to evaluate these guys. The Raptors are. And so if they see somebody here who, and again, Masai Ujiri is a very good talent evaluator. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Scottie Barnes, Giannis Antetokounmpo, he spotted them. Like he knows what he's looking for. And they've
Hmm.
only gotten better with the process. And even Grady, like all my concerns on draft night about Grady, and it's like watching him play, I'm like, man, these guys really know what they're doing in the draft. So the only bummer for me over the last, I don't know, 3 years has been how many draft picks we've given up. And here you are saying we need to give up more. No, man, I don't ever want to see us draft. I don't want to ever see us trade another draft pick until we're ready to contend. Draft picks are so invaluable right now, not just because they represent hope or young player to follow for the fans or whatever. It's not just that. It's because of where you are with the cap space. Like these 4-year locked investments and plus 7 years of control for a team that sometimes has trouble attracting free agents, paired with an excellent development staff, is a gold mine. You need more draft picks. You don't need less draft picks. I would trade so many players right now for draft picks to get 2025, 2026 picks. obviously at some point you have too many, but consider all of these stabs, stabs. And I think because the Raptors have not had many draft assets, they've been unfortunately forced to pour all their development resources into maybe not so great prospects.
Second round prospect.
That or just prospects who aren't working out. Like for instance, Malachi Flynn.
Yeah, maybe I'm hindered by I'm blinded by those guys. Like those guys, just dealing with those guys the last 4 years probably has changed my opinion on the picks.
Okay, but do you remember Pascal Siakam and OG
I remember, but that was a long
Scottie
ago.
Barnes? And I mean, like they've done better than they have done worse. Like consider the Raptors draft record. If you could even sell yourself on their 60%, could you say they're 60% accurate? I mean, you could say what you want about Christian Koloko, blood clots, etc., but he was a good player. He was a good pick at 33.
That was a positive pick at 33.
Okay, Koloko was a positive pick. Delano Banton was a positive pick. David Johnson was a bust. Okay,
Jalen Harris was almost a positive pick.
What? Jalen Harris was almost a positive pick. Malachi Flynn was not. But Scottie Barnes was, and OG was, and Norman Powell was, and DeLon Wright was, and Jakob was, and you go back and back and back, and Scottie was, and Pascal was, and it's like, holy shit. Like this team is batting about 70 to 75% on any draft pick of any consequence. And I'm not including DeJuan Hernandez. So if you consider that and put that into the equation with 5 draft picks, some of which could be very high over the next few years.
Yeah, I mean,
one All-Star is all you need. You just need one All-Star, man.
You kind of convinced me. I guess I'm just looking at it like Barnes. You kind of want him to maximize his years as much as possible, and it seems like if we take that route, we're gonna be competing when he's in his late 20s, and I'd rather be competing when he's in his mid 20s.
He's 22 right now. Look, I think
we're taking the slow route though, even though it might be the better route.
Don't call it the slow route. Call it the scenic route. Like you got to look at it this way. Every team has to go through these, bumps, and at some point,
you wish it was like the 2023 draft and the 2022 draft. That I think that's where I'm stuck.
Yeah, but those drafts were misunderstood at the time. They're only understood correctly now. 2021 was a great draft. 2022 was a bad draft. But now, when we look back at it, we're like, oh my God, Chet.
What was the conversation pre-2022?
Dude, 2022, there was talks even 3 weeks before the draft that Paolo might not be a top 5 pick. That Chet would be like really injury prone and soft. That Jabari is probably the number 1 pick in that draft. But he's not a real first overall pick. There's no real first overall pick in that draft. Chet Holmgren has been, at least this year,
the best.
He's awesome. And Paolo is an all-star. And Dyson Daniels has proven to be very good when he's played. And there's a lot of talent in the 2022 draft class. Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams, by some people's accounts, is going to be a franchise player. He was picked 12th. And you know what? He was a reach. He was a reach at 12. People were like, what? Jalen, what?
Some people loved it.
Some people loved it. People who watched him loved it. I was blinded. I was dumbfounded because I only watched 2 of his games at Santa Clara. I had not watched him play. And I was like, really? He's a little bit old. Are we sure? And yeah, man, he's been great. So here's the thing. Like, we don't know. But, like you just trust it. And yeah, I'm telling you, like 2022 was considered a very weak class. So consider this. You had a very weak class, and you had a player who was mocked in the 20s who got picked at 12, who is now the 2nd best player in that draft class, or the 3rd best player in that draft class, and is considered by many to be a surefire bankum future all-star. What does that say about the act?
Who's that, by the way? I
Jalen,
lost the train of thought. Jalen,
Jalen
yeah.
McDaniels.
I think
I'm
he's
sorry,
probably.
Jalen Williams, not Jalen McDaniels.
I think he's the best. Him and Chet are the best. Yeah.
You think he's better than Paolo?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Paolo's.
No
Paolo.
disagreement here.
Yeah, but
Nevertheless,
so
if
wait.
Paolo is the third best player in that draft class, if he is, and he's already an all-star at the age of 21, what does
Yeah,
that
that means
say?
it's a great
And that
draft.
was a weak, and that was a weak draft, right?
Yeah.
There just aren't like there aren't any more 2006 and 2000 drafts anymore. I feel like when I'm looking at this draft class, yeah, maybe I'm not seeing a Wembanyama, but that doesn't mean shit. There wasn't a Wembanyama in the previous 10 years either, right? And I'm not seeing a
I,
Zion, and I'm not
I
seeing.
don't. I don't
But
even
is
see him clear Scotty.
mm,
Again, I know those guys. It's not the hardest thing to reach those levels, but I'm not seeing someone athletically, skill wise, talent wise, potential wise to get to that level. But some people do compare Alex Sarr to Mobley. So, um, and Mobley has been somewhat disappointing as a prospect, somewhat, even though he's actually having a better year than people think.
I think if I think Evan Mobley is perfectly fine for a third overall pick. I think he's been really good for a third overall pick. People consider him disappointing because his career has gone out of order. It's the same
Yeah,
thing
and
with
then
Scottie Barnes, right? Do you
people are saying some
everyone's
stuff.
conversation around Scottie after year 2 was that he's such a bum. But if Scottie's year 2 was his year 1 and his year 1 was his year 2, people
Year
would have
two,
thought he
yeah,
was better. So
I've
that's the
thought that.
point.
Yeah,
Sometimes you just go the wrong way for a year and people start to freak out. Now, I think with Evan Mobley, some of those questions around his jumper and toughness and whatever, they've been around for a while. So,
his personality, yeah,
sure.
it's a little kind of laissez-faire. Like you don't really love it. Sometimes I think like if I was a Cavs fan, I wish he would have had like Scottie's brain wiring. If he did, he'd be way better because Scottie's like has no fear. And I feel like when I watch Mobley, I see a little bit of like hesitation out there, and I never see hesitation from Scottie. He's like, if he feels like he fits
I
right in.
personally, I really like Evan Mobley a lot, and I think he's
No,
very
I like
underrated.
him too. By the way, I
Yeah,
actually I've kind of I've been a little confused. I thought the conversation around him was like they're overrating him a little bit early on, but it's to a point where like people are saying
dude. At the age
they
of
like
21, he finished top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year
yeah,
voting.
it's gotten out of control. Like I'm seeing Sengun picked over. Like Sengun is just there's no way he's gonna be better than Mobley. Mobley once he gets a little bit stronger, he learns the 5 position. He's gonna be.
I could definitely see Shingun being better than Mobley.
I disagree, but I will
I
say
think this draft class, this 2021 draft class, will belong to Scotty and Mobley and Shingun and Franz and
yeah, those are my
that's it.
4. But
You
I
know,
think Scotty and Mobley are levitating above
But Jalen
the
Green's
rest.
coming. Jalen Green and Jalen Suggs are coming out strong now. Who knows where we'll be next year? Trey Murphy has been incredible. If you look at the analytics on the New Orleans Pelicans, like perimeter defense, like their 3-point defense, field goal defense, all of it. Yeah, a lot of it is Herb Jones, who was also in that draft class, by the way. But a lot of
Yeah,
it is
and
also Trey Murphy. So those two guys have been incredible for that team. So at
wait,
some point, it's just like, do you know what I mean? Like I think drafts are so weird. There's a Kinder egg element of it always. There's so many unknowns always, and I think you always have to approach it with a little bit of caution when you start saying this is definitely the case or this is definitely not the case. I don't think that that's ever accurate. It's never as guaranteed as it feels, and hey, man, the Zion was supposed to be like the best thing ever.
and
He was supposed to be the best player in the NBA within a couple of years, and he's not. He's not. And
there
some
though,
people would
there
argue he might not even be the best player on his team right now. So, and again, like Markelle Fultz, he went first overall. Like, where is that now? He might be getting mid-level money next year. So, yeah, I just think that it's just difficult to project. And every single year, I mean, look, if you ever want to see a case of a draft class where, crazy shit happen. Look at the 1996 draft class. You had MVPs, being drafted in the teens, right? So it's like Jokic, in the second round, you have possibly, some people will say at some point he'll be one of the 5 greatest players of all time. He was drafted in the second round. So this is what I'm saying. Like, yeah, if the player isn't there, you can't find something that's not there, and I get that. But I'm saying
Wait, so
if
Rob,
you have 3 chances, you have a very unique opportunity as the Raptors here, because by having picks all over the first round, basically, right? You have access to more players than any other team. Because you have so many draft picks, agents will love you. You have the first pick of the second round, most likely. You have a mid first rounder from the Pacers, and you potentially have a top 6 pick, which is your own. And again, if you retain all 3 of these picks, you are now in the running to work out every single player, other than maybe and because there's no actual first overall pick, or any
you get to look at
consensus
everybody.
first overall, you'll probably get everyone in the gym. So if there's somebody you really want to talk to, whatever, there's no Zion here, there's no Wemby, there's nothing like that. You get to talk to everybody. And unless someone has a promise at the first overall or second overall pick or whatever, you're going to get to work out just about everyone. And I feel like the minute you get the guy in the gym and you get to work him out and you get to talk to him, you get a better read on all the stuff you've been looking at all year, make a better, more informed decision. And again, sometimes what happens is there's a guy that you're looking at, with the 17th pick, for instance, right? And you really, really like him at 17, but then there's this other guy you like a little bit more at 17, and so you take him, right? And then what happens is that guy falls, and he falls, and he falls, and he's still there when you get to 31, and now you got 2. You got them both.
Yeah.
And that happens, and that happens more often than you think. And in a draft like this, it could happen very often. So yeah, that's sort of my two cents on it. I'm very excited about the Raptors picking young players. I want this team to get younger. I think it's going to be good for Scottie. I think it's going to be good for the team.
I have one more question for you. So just to reiterate your point, you did make a great point about if, like for example, that Jalen Williams draft, the teams that were drafting higher, they probably wish they got him in the building. And the Raptors, for example, a player like Jalen Williams in this draft, since they have that 17th or like wherever that projected Pacers pick is going to be, they're going to get a chance to bring him into their facility. So like there's like, for example, the Magic, the Oklahoma, they're the ones who drafted him, but they didn't get a chance to bring him into their facility because they were probably like, why would we want to check him out, right? Like Jabari Smith, the Houston Rockets.
Right.
So they
So
get a
it's
chance.
like imagine you have the second pick and you have the 32nd pick, right? So in a top 3 draft where there's legit absolute consensus on who the 3-4 guys in contention for those 3 picks are, you have the number 2 pick and the number 32 pick. Let's just say, for instance. So anyone who sees themselves as the 6th pick, 8th pick, 10th pick, 12th pick, 15th pick, 17th pick, 20th pick, 22nd, they're not working out for you. You don't have a draft pick that they can fit into. So they're not traveling.
You get to
they're not
see
moving.
everybody.
Exactly. They're not going to go across the country to come see you. Why? Why risk going to a workout, performing badly, and then having some sort of report come out about something horrible you did?
Exhausting yourself.
Exhausting yourself, ruining, because the flights get
Your stock.
exhausting, and exactly
screwing up your stock.
Exactly. So my point is, when you have these 3 draft picks, especially as spaced out as they are, it's not like the Raptors have the 31st, 32nd, and 33rd. No. They have them spaced out. What's great is, as I said, you get to look at everybody. And what's most interesting is I consider, for instance, oh God, what was it? There was a draft where this happened. It was Bruno Caboclo, ironically. Not a good example, but it is the example. So
the 16 draft, right? No, the 14 draft?
It was the 2014 draft. And they had looked at him initially for the 35th overall pick. or 36th overall pick, in which they used for DeAndre Daniels. Oh my God, Nikola Jokic draft. That was the Jokic draft, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was Jokic draft.
Great. Okay, relive this misery. Okay, so they looked at Bruno Caboclo for that pick, and then around draft night, they got intel that I think it was Leandro Barbosa had told the Phoenix Suns, who had a 20-something pick, to take him, that he was a really good player and that they were interested, and maybe the Spurs were interested as well. And so the
Jokic?
Raptors, no, Bruno Caboclo.
Oh,
So the Raptors, thinking instead of risking this guy not being there at 35 and missing out on Giannis back-to-back years, let's just take our Giannis this year. This is where I think, like, it's funny, like sometimes you start seeing ghosts of the mistakes you made. I think that was an example of the Raptors seeing a ghost of the mistake they made because Bruno was not Giannis. However, I will say that's an example of something that could happen, where maybe you work out a guy at 31, right? Because he sees himself as a second round talent, right? So you bring him in the gym as a 31st overall pick, but you're so impressed with him, like he blows you out of the fucking water, where you start to think of him differently. And you start to say, shit, on draft night, let's say you get to draft night and you start hearing rumors. Oh my God, that guy that we really, really love at 31, there are teams all throughout the 20s that want to take that want to take him. He has a promise at 27. Guess what? We have the 17th overall pick. Do we like him more than you can just take him with a Pacers pick? Boom. There you go. This flexibility, like the Raptors could nail this draft. They could also really fuck this draft up. There's a lot of whenever you have 3 draft picks, like there's such an awesome opportunity, at play. The last time the Raptors had like a really, really full draft coffers, they fucked up every single pick. Do you remember what that was?
No, just tell me. I don't know.
Okay. Does anyone in the comments know the last time the Raptors had like a ton of picks and they drafted 4 players?
In totality, right? In both rounds, right?
It was both rounds. Yep. 4 picks. I mean, obviously they had one draft where they had 3 picks. They had Delano Banton, David Johnson, etc. Moore is saying 2006. Incorrect, sir. 2006 was Andre Bargnani. It was actually 2005. So 2005, they had the 7th pick, and they picked Charlie Villanueva. Turned out to be a mistake. Then they had the 16th pick. They picked Joey Graham. Also a mistake. Then they had the 41st overall pick. They picked my boy Roko Ukic, which I loved, but unfortunately, that was a bit of a mistake because he didn't really pan out. And then I believe they had the 58th overall pick, and they picked Uroš Slokar, who is a Slovenian player who really never really played for the team. So, yeah, for 58th pick is not really it's not really of consequence, but it is worth noting that image of Rob Babcock standing there with 4 young players, and you're just imagining all that can be and all that will be. And what's ironic is that summer, they ended up sending Roka Ukic over to Tau, and then they ended up signing Jose Calderon. And Jose Calderon ended up being kind of like an unofficial draft pick. And he ended up having like this very long NBA career. So he was the best thing that Rob Babcock did, Jose Calderon. Anyways, James saying we should have gotten Danny Granger. Hell yes, we should have.
Wait,
Anyway,
so Rob, if they don't get the pick, are you still team? Let's not trade for a player.
Yep.
What do you do if they don't get the pick? You just keep it chugging along?
I do my best with pick 17, 16, whatever the hell the Pacers pick is, and 31. And, same mindset. And then I just use that extra cap space to do something this offseason. And then, know that I'll have potentially a late lottery pick next year. And then I won't have this San Antonio mistake hanging over my head all the next year. Look, man, there's a positive spin on this. You can definitely spin it in a positive way. And it's not even that unrealistic to spin it in a positive way. To give up this draft pick is not the end of the world at all. it will only feel like the end of the world if you start to look at the players, 3-4 years down the line, and then say, oh, we could have had so and so, but instead we got Jakob Poeltl, or we could have had so and so, but instead we got Jakob Poeltl. I don't know. What's done is done. At this point, I feel like if I talk about the Jakob Poeltl trade anymore, I'm just gonna like depress myself. So I don't want to do that anymore. That deal is done. At this point, what can you do about it? You can't control the
Yep.
pick any more than you already have. You obviously tank the shit out of it. You control what you can. You have to control what you can. In life, you got to control what you can. You can't be trying to control things you can't.
The draft lottery is like conference finals, right? I think it's usually
I
like
believe
game one.
so.
Yeah. So yeah,
It's
that's
around there,
really
yeah.
the countdown has started, and it's really just about
But
that right now.
again, like as I'm saying, like, okay, let's say right now, in terms of like joy, is it 100-0? Like, am I 100% happy if the Raptors get the pick, but I'm like 0% happy if they give it up? No, it's more like 55-45. I
Oh,
prefer that they keep the pick, but I'm not
yeah,
terribly upset if they have to give it up. You know?
yeah. You're like more reasoned, like that. I think most of the fan base is like 90-10. Like there's people who are gonna be jumping off the ledge.
Well, that's it. Because people tend to panic over stuff like this, and the truth is, people are just really bad at thinking things out long term. You know, like
But there's also a lot of us who hated that trade. Not to bring it up, so it's kind of like it's a final kiss of death.
it's rubbing the salt in the wound. No, I
Yeah,
get that, but hating that trade and talking about it and getting sick about it over and over, it's a toxic trait, and we just keep doing it as Raptor fans. It's like the Jakob Poeltl trade, almost to the point where we can't even appreciate the fact that Jakob Poeltl has been such a good player for the Raptors. I think it's time to move on past that trade and just realize, hey, we did something, it didn't work out. Sometimes that happens. The process was flawed. I think what bothers me about that trade so much is that they doubled down on a core that didn't deserve to be doubled down on. That's what bothers me. They made a really, really dumb decision in terms of evaluating the players that they had in terms of where they were. Making a trade, but that's ironic, isn't it? Because trading for Jakob Poeltl, trading multiple draft picks for Jakob Poeltl, it's not too unlike trading multiple firsts to get Mikal Bridges. It's definitely worse, but I'm saying
it's
like
way
it's
worse.
not.
But I agree with you. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah.
And that's exactly the point. So it's like at this point, draft picks, and again, there's a very good chance, and possibly a chance. I don't say a very good chance. There's a chance none of those draft picks ever amount to being a better player than Jakob Poeltl.
Yeah, there's
There's a
like a
chance.
40% chance. Yeah, 30%,
Yeah,
40%.
because Jakob Poeltl is a pretty good player. He's
Yeah,
a starting center in the NBA. But I think to some extent, I'm not as like invested in it because I know that this draft is relatively weak. And I know that because the Raptors' odds of keeping the sixth pick are so low, mathematically, it's almost like the Raptors have said to themselves, we either want a top 4 pick or we want no pick at all. Like when you look at the math, their odds of sticking at 6 are so low, right? Their odds of literally moving up to 1 and 2 are higher than their odds of sticking at 6. So they're really playing the odds here. I think that they see somebody at the top of this draft that they really like. I think they see someone in the top 3, top 4 range, and they're trying to give themselves as good a chance to get to that player. But if they can't get to that player, maybe they're like, hey, like consider it like, let's just say you do a draft board. And on that draft board, you put every player from 2024 and 2025. Put them all on the board. And don't pay any mind to who you get in the gym first or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Just evaluate all players on the same board. I'll bet you anything that the first 2 players on that board are 2025 prospects. So that's 100%. But if that third player is a 2024 prospect, I don't know if it's Risache or Sar or Topic or whoever it is, or if that fourth player is a 2024 pick, Now you start to look down the line and you start to say, do we get to 12 2025 picks before we get to 5 2024 picks on our board? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if you do, then this is the perfect way to play this. So you have no chance. Like right now, the Raptors have no chance of having a late lottery pick in this draft. Maybe they don't want one. Maybe they don't see any value in that range in this draft, which is why they top 6 protected this pick in the first place. Maybe they see value in certain, and again, drafts are weird. They're like different, you know? There are certain drafts which, even looking back on it, again, hindsight's 2020. I look back on certain drafts where I'm like, man, 1 was great, 2 was a bust, 3 was great, 4 was great, 5 was good, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 were ass as fuck. How the fuck did
Yeah,
that happen? But it happens
sounds
like
like
that.
sounds like
Sometimes drafts are
2018.
like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I mean, sometimes you have guys going top 5 that really shouldn't even be lottery picks, like Sheldon Williams. Sheldon Williams should never have been a lottery pick. Straight up, he shouldn't have been a lottery pick. Emeka Okafor probably shouldn't have been a 2nd overall pick. Adam Morrison probably shouldn't have been a 3rd overall pick. You know, you can make a lot of arguments that guys have gone in places in the draft that they probably don't belong. And so I look at that and I'm just like, draft is very inexact science, but you got to look at 2024 and 2025 as one bucket and try to evaluate where you want to land that pick. And I'm not saying that ever giving up a draft pick is a good thing, but I'm saying if you are going to give one up, give the worst one up. And so I guess you evaluate, is the 7th overall pick in 2024, is it a better pick than 13th overall in 2025? Because that's the real debate here.
Yeah, some people would say no, or a lot of people would say
I
no.
think those
Like
people
50%.
are, and again, I don't know. I'm not some 2025 draft expert. I've just barely seen these kids. I think those people are wrong.
AJ. That's AJ.
No,
Devonta, that guy.
DeBon
Oh,
says
that's
2026.
Okay. I have no clue.
Cooper
think
Flag
Dinkley.
2025.
Yeah, Cooper Flag. Yeah. What
Boozer.
about Dinkley?
So I'm just saying, like, we don't know for sure, but people are like really hype about 2025. And again, people were really hype about 2021. So maybe the Raptors find out when they go through the draft workouts and they go through the process, oh my God, we were wrong. We were all wrong. 2024 is the dream class. And 2025 is a fucking, it's a terrible class. There's only 2 good players. We don't know that. So I'm just saying, I know it's not a very reassuring thing to say nobody knows, but the truth is, even the smartest person in the room will be wrong about the NBA draft. It's so many variables. There's too much. And when you don't have a Tim Duncan, like a 4-year college vet who's like, been a beast and you know exactly what he is, then all you have is hypotheticals. A lot of people really sold themselves on James Wiseman because of a couple of games that he played in Memphis and his high school tape. A lot of people really sold themselves on Eddie Curry. I mean, again, the way we talk about these players now versus being there at the time when we were talking about those players then, there was nothing obvious about Kwame Brown being a weak player. I promise you. When Kwame Brown was drafted, this is not a joke. When Kwame was drafted, I swear to God, I read articles saying he was the next Kevin Garnett.
Yeah, I mean the game is mental though.
Irrelevant. What I'm trying to say is, we now think of that as a weak draft class. We say, oh wow, 2001, whatever, it was a weak draft class. But at the time, it was considered transcendent.
Yeah, okay.
Kwame, Tyson Chandler, and Eddie Curry all at the top of the draft. Plus you got Pau Gasol in there. Like, there was so much hype about these 4 bigs coming out, all of them like franchise changing, blah, 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 blah. Darko Milicic, 2003, like, oh my God, any other draft, I swear to God, here's the exact tag. People talk about Darko Milicic like a bust today. The exact phrasing of Darko Milicic on draft night by draft experts, people who had apparently watched him play, people who worked for the NBA at the time, in any other draft in the past 15 years, Darko Milicic would be the first overall pick. 15 years. That means they said with a straight face that he would go over Shaq, that he would go over Grant Hill, that he would go over Penny Hardaway, that he would go over Tim
Allen
Duncan,
Iverson.
he would go over Allen Iverson, he would go over
Yeah.
all those guys apparently. He was just that good. He was so
I didn't know.
miss.
I didn't know he was that good of a prospect.
He was a
Wow.
crazy prospect because that's and Melo won a national championship with Syracuse. Melo was amazing. So for any player to go over Carmelo Anthony was insane to anyone who was watching Carmelo do this. And there were a lot of people who believed that everyone would regret picking LeBron and Darko over Carmelo. And so that led a lot of people to say, this is the first draft in my lifetime where there are really 3 first overall picks. And no one can go wrong with any of them. And of course, the Raptors, with the 3rd best odds, end up sliding down to 4th. My point being, that draft ended up being a big 3 draft for all the different reasons. Because Dwayne Wade, this guy who was supposed to go 20th, ends up creeping up to the lottery, ends up going 5th. And the team that honestly, and this is where I say, like, people are revisionist historians. I bet you any amount of money, two things happened in that draft, and the whole history of the NBA has changed. There was a player who was supposed to stay in that draft, Pavel Podkolzin. I've talked about this before on this draft, but I got inside information on this at the time, and like after the fact, and I was just like, I have to talk about this so that it becomes a popularized and thought process. Pavel was a 7'4" Russian player, and this is on the heels of Yao Ming being pretty dominant in the NBA, and they were like, oh my God, everyone needs to find the next Yao Ming. So when the Raptors ended up getting the 4th overall pick, he was rumored to be in consideration over Chris Bosh for that 4th overall pick. And there was no talk about Dwayne Wade. There was no talk about TJ Ford, Kirk Heinrich, any of those guys. For the 4th overall pick. There was some people who were, low-key saying like, oh my God, they need to draft TJ Ford. They need a point guard. But nevertheless, they were like, the Raptors need a center. They need to draft Pavel Podkolzin because they have Antonio Davis. Hakeem Olajuwon hasn't worked out. You have Vince Carter. Vince Carter's getting disgruntled. You need a big. You need a big who can bang with Shaq. So Pavel Podkolzin almost became the guy for the Raptors. And then for whatever reason, maybe he didn't get a promise. Maybe something happened. Maybe they didn't like what they saw. He goes back. They draft Chris Bosh. Now, here's the funny fact. If the Raptors had drafted anyone other than Chris Bosh would have been on the Miami Heat, which means Dwayne Wade would have probably slipped. Likely. Who had the 6th pick? The 6th pick went to the Clippers that year, and they picked Chris Kaman.
Okay. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, Chris Kaman.
I can't remember now who had the 7th pick. I think it was the Bulls with Kirk Heinrich. And I think the 8th pick was TJ Ford to the Bucks. I believe that 8th pick probably would be given, Dwayne Wade, Marquette, etc. I think it probably would have been Dwayne Wade to the Milwaukee Bucks. There you go. The entire history of the NBA has changed with one little flip. But I heard at the time that the Miami Heat went for Dwayne Wade after Chris Bosh went off the board, that they really, really liked Chris. So take that with what you take that for what it's worth. But anyways, my point is, when I tell you what was said at the time versus what happened, every draft is wrong. So approach it with that level of humility and just say, everyone's going to be wrong. Some people are going to be more wrong than others. I trust the Raptors to be less wrong than others and just move on. Yeah.
Yeah, Rob, you convinced me. I don't know how many times you've heard that before, but I take back what I said. That
awesome.
was you got to keep the picks.
Okay, awesome. Okay, take care, man. Have a good one.
All right, man.
See ya. Bye. Okay, let's get to the post game. Thanks to Little John for stopping by. It was a good, interesting debate. I like debates. Debates are good. Like, I think debates are generally good as long as they're respectful.
They get a ton of energy and maybe enjoyed yourself a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. For me, it just felt good to kind of be back out there, just with the guys and playing. Definitely, definitely helped me, feel better for sure. So yeah.
RJ, obviously, you and Quick went through similar losses, and you guys are good friends. You've been coaching a long time.
Yeah.
What did it mean to you to get to return to the Raptors lineup with your good friend?
Meant a lot, and during the whole process, we were constantly checking on each other. Like you said, I've known him for a long time, and we've been together for like the past 4 years. So, it's definitely hard to kind of go through that, but having somebody like that to talk to for sure helps.
Just in terms of playing alongside Grady, what have you noticed playing with him tonight versus earlier this season?
Grady. I like Grady. I don't really know what was happening at the beginning of the season, but since I got here, Grady's been playing well. So, I'm happy for him. So he's got to figure a lot of things out, but he's doing well, and he's showing, every day, what he can do and how he can affect his team in a positive way.
Oui, bon retour RJ. Qu'est-ce que ça fait de retourner à la compétition, d'être avec l'équipe et surtout l'accueil des fans? Qu'est-ce que ça t'a fait?
Juste très content de jouer au basket encore. Alors, ouais, c'est tout. Juste très content.
A little bit good at least to see RJ and then Quick look a little bit back like themselves.
It was great to see them out there. Both of them enjoyed being on the court and just being able to do what they love to do. Obviously, both of them, they had a really good first half. RJ with 19 points and 4 assists, and Quick with 13 points and 5 assists. They brought some new energy there, and very happy to see them back.
On the other side, we knew Davis would have a good night because of the size, but LeBron kind of had bullied his way through whatever he wanted to do. Is it possible to guard that guy?
It is possible. Everybody's trying their best at their night, every single night. We were fighting as much as we could, and he's just.
We interrupt this press conference to bring you a meditative break. Please take a moment to breathe in, breathe out slowly. Please control whatever seething anger is inside of you. Certainly, there's a bit of seething anger inside of me, listening to a grown man ask another grown man whether it's possible to guard LeBron James. I don't know if that's tongue-in-cheek, Doug Smith, but God.
So elite. It's amazing to see a player, at this age, after 20 years in NBA, to play at this high level. Like, we never saw anything like it, and we gotta really embrace this moment and to be grateful that we live in era of LeBron James and the way he's playing out there. I definitely don't like when he's playing against me, but I have a lot of respect for everything he does.
In terms of just their offense, were you just surprised there wasn't more rust on RJ and IQ?
You never know when players are coming from a break. Is there fresh legs and excitement and adrenaline kicks in? Rust might show up in a game 2, 3, or 4. Like you just never know how those things go. Obviously, they were on a minute restriction tonight, so I thought for the time that they were on the court, they were really trying to do their best.
What does it do for this team, which obviously it's been a tough season, to have those two guys come back, given what they've been through with the personal losses they've both gone through?
I mean, we talked about this as basketball being escape for all of us. It's something that players love, coaches love, you guys love, everybody's. This is our escape and this is our safe place, and we're blessed to do basketball for living, and just to have those guys back and them playing, and they can feel the team atmosphere and that team and teammates, coaches, everybody's there to support them. I think it means much for them, and it definitely makes all of us proud and happy to have them back.
You know what I kept thinking about? They kept asking about rust. And I was thinking, I wonder if they'll ever let me in the press room and I can ask questions about like CLR. Like, what do you do about the rust? And it's like, yo, y'all never heard of CLR? CLR removes rust. Bad joke. Bad joke to end the night. Okay. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. 196 people at nearly midnight for a team getting, mollywopped for their 14th straight loss. I can't even express the gratitude. And listening to my CLR dad jokes. That's probably the first dad joke I've told in, 400 and plus lives. Alexander P saying media members love the game of basketball. I don't think so. Bro, honestly, first thing I thought when he said, he's like, you guys love basketball. I'm like, cap, straight up cap. Anyway, who knows? Maybe they do love it. I mean, Michael Grange played basketball at some point. I'm pretty sure Doug Smith has seen a basketball at some point. So, who knows? Okay. That's it for me. Yeah, I got to get back to some renovation shit. I have fallen so far behind. She Wolf saying, like the video on the way out, guys. Appreciate that. I think there's a lot of positives, to take away from this season. Obviously, it's a lot of uncertainty, and people aren't necessarily the greatest at dealing with uncertainty, and I appreciate that. I get that. We all have a certain need for uncertainty, which is like the outcome of a game. If I told you the outcome of every game before the season started, you'd be like, this sucks, like it's terrible. So there's a certain degree of uncertainty that we need in life, but there's also a certain degree of certainty that we need in our lives. Kind of poorly worded there. And I just feel like the Raptors, they don't have a lot of certainty. And I think that it's worthwhile. Personally, I think it's worthwhile if you want to be a rational fan. I'm not going to tell you how to be a fan. You can be irrational. You can be, you can be casual. You can be one of those in-depth fans that breaks down every single game like a crazy person and watches every game twice. You can be an analytics fan. Like, I feel like too many times we want to police how people are fans of a team, and I don't really think we need to do that. I think this is like sports is an escape for some people and a passion for other people. And who the hell am I to say what's right and what's wrong for you? But I'm saying, like, if your goal is to be like one of those, super smart intellectual fans, who kind of just sees the forest from the trees and always knows what's coming and has these super bright and intelligent takes on everything that's going on with your team. And certainly, I think this community is full of people who fit that bill. I think the best thing to do sometimes is to take things that you're very, very strongly for or feel very strongly and argue the opposite. Case in point, the Jakob Poeltl trade is a really bad trade. That's a firm point. I've been on that point for the better part of a year. Am I willing to argue the opposite? For a day, am I willing to hold the opposite? Right. Same thing with 2024 is a weak draft class. Same thing with RJ Barrett is not going to be a star or is a star, or the same thing with Scottie Barnes is definitely going to be an all-NBA guy. Maybe he's not going to be an all-NBA guy. Can we deal with the argument against? I say this to say this. When you have two ideas and you're trying to compete with those ideas, I think it's very tempting to shut down one idea and just say, no, that's not it. But then I don't think that you only ever at best have a very loose relationship with your own idea because you rejected the other idea before you even held it. I think the best thing to do when we have, something that we maybe vehemently disagree with is to hold it for a bit. Just pick it up and see how it feels in your hands. Paolo Banchero is the face of the league. Okay, let me pick that up and hold it for a second. Cade Cunningham is going to be a 3-time All-Star. Let me pick that up and hold it for a second. Let me see how that feels, right? Like, Scoot Henderson's going to be a better player than Brandon Miller, which is what I thought 9 months ago. But it's not what I think today. You know what I mean? And it's just like, let me hold that. Let me pick it up. And I think that it's a good thing. It's a really good thing to change your mind. It's a really good thing to change your mind, and as information changes, you should be able to change with it. So, if RJ Barrett at some point over this summer or next year or whatever, Zach Edey is a player that for years, I feel for 2 years, I've been shutting down people saying, that Zach Edey is a future Raptor, blah, 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 because honestly, there's a lot of biases coloring it. There was, God, what's his name? There was an Asian prospect who was playing for the G League Ignite, and I'm forgetting his name, but he was also 7'3", 7'4", and everybody, please let me know in the chat if you remember who I'm talking about, his name. And everyone was like, "Oh my God, we need to draft this guy. We need to draft this guy. We need to draft this guy." I can't remember if he was Taiwan. Was he Taiwanese? I think he might have been Taiwanese. Kai Soto. There we go. God damn it. Yes, Kai Soto. And good memory. Thanks, Sean. And that player, I swear to God, like people entered our chats and every single forum that we were ever in, every single comment section, it's like, you got to draft Kai Soto. Kai Soto would be perfect for the Raptors. And I'm just like, shut the fuck up. We're not drafting Kai Soto. And I think it was the same draft in which we drafted Christian Coloco. Summer Low saying Philippines. My bad. Okay, so Philippines. And that would have been really huge, obviously, because there's such a huge interest in basketball in the Philippines. So that being said, Zach Edey has Canada behind him, right? And a lot of people who see a huge future for Zach in Canada basketball naturally would like to see Canada basketball's future in Toronto. And of course, the FIBA game and the NBA game is a totally different game. And so you have to consider that with a grain of salt. And when I watched, Zach Edey in his freshman year at Purdue, because again, like just like I did with Sim Buller and his brother, like I watch Canadian players, Negus Webster Chan, like Stefan Yankovic. Like I've watched a lot of Canadian players play, even guys that you've probably never heard of, guys who never made it to the NBA, Javon Shepard. Like there's a lot of guys, who were very good players. Maybe they didn't make it to the NBA. Maybe they just made it to Division I or whatever. But I watched them all play. And, watching Zach Edey play as a freshman in Purdue, I didn't see an NBA player. I just didn't. But hey, watching him play like a couple of days ago, saw a much better player. And isn't that to his credit? So I got to be willing to accept that, hey, I didn't think this guy was an NBA player 3 years ago, 2 years ago. But today, I think he's an NBA player. And maybe if I keep watching him and I watch him in the summer league and I see him against NBA competition, maybe 10 games into next season, I'll think he's a rotation big in the NBA. And maybe if he keeps working hard and the league keeps getting bigger and, some rule change comes down the line and he does like some fantastic hip mobility exercises, maybe, just maybe, he ends up, I don't know, he ends up being like a starter. I don't know. Maybe he ends up being like a really tall Brook Lopez. She-Wolf, thank you so much. I have quit. It's just, I guess my lungs are detoxing. I don't know. The last couple of days have been tough with the coughing, but yes. I think my lungs are detoxing, but hopefully you can see in my face. Do I don't know. Like, do I look a little bit more alive than I usually do? I don't know. Jaden saying a lot of maybes, man. Fair. But when we're talking about 22-year-old athletes, dude, there's always going to be maybes. There's a health maybe. At least with Zach Edey, there's no maybe on like, in terms of his growth trajectory. His growth is proven. You talk about a freshman, you don't know what their growth is like because you've only seen them 1 year in college. I mean, with him, you've seen like a track record of growth and you've seen like a real progression and an ability to work. Now, what you need to do as a talent evaluator is you need to look at him, you need to look at the league, you need to look at your roster, you need to look at your strength and development program, and you need to be able to say, like, what can we do with this guy? What could we actually do with this guy? Right? Like, what could we... Are the things that are going to, stop him, are they fixable? And if they are fixable, are we the ones who can fix them? And does he want to fix them? And does he accept that those are things that need to be fixed? So think of all these things when I'm looking at young players, but ultimately you can't even look at these things until you're willing to hold them. So again, to the person, who there's a couple of people who came into this chat who were like very RJ, you're not giving RJ fair credit, whatever. I promise you, the second that RJ Barrett looks like anything more than what he does right now, I will change my mind on, maybe him being an all-star. I don't know. Maybe he will be an all-star. Like, he was a former McDonald's All-American. He was a Gatorade National Player of the Year. He's destined to be an all-star. The fact that he's not going to be an all-star is actually considered like a massive disappointment because he was a top 3 overall pick who was once the number 1 player in his recruiting class. He should be an all-star. He should definitely be an all-star. He just hasn't looked like one to me so far. In his NBA career, he has not looked like an all-star. If he can become one, it would be such a win for the Toronto Raptors. That being said, him becoming an all-star will not make him the face of this team. Because you have a player on this team who very much projects to be a superstar. And the fact that he could be an all-star, if he and Immanuel Quickley turn into all-star level players, like, you're great. You're done. Like, you're set. For the next, 5 years, you're set. All the other stuff is like inconsequential. Not inconsequential, but becomes secondary, because that would be such a huge win if those 2 players turn into all-stars instead of what they are right now, which is good starters or average starters. Yes, your color looks better, Robbie. Sees warm water and Fisherman's Friend original strong to get through court days when I was choking. The latter saved me on duty council days. I don't know what court days are, and I don't know what duty council days are, but Fisherman's Friend original. Okay. Definitely will consider it. I think I need to do a gargle or something, or rinse. I don't know. I think my throat just needs to detox. But yeah, I've been talking a lot. It would definitely be interesting to see a realistic 20. Alexander B. I think you're going to see me trade like half the roster for draft picks, and then, I already did it. Run a hot shower and sit in the steam. That could help. Yeah, let me consider that. All right, guys, take care. Have a good one. I need to finish sanding. I need to finish sanding some doors. I was supposed to like renovate the whole house while my girlfriend was in Vancouver. She's coming back tonight. I have not renovated the whole house. The whole house is like upside down. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe I can renovate the whole house in 2 hours. No, I can't. Oh well. Anyways, yes, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Doesn't get this much easier for the Raptors. Minnesota is a tough team, so yeah. Duty counsel equals free criminal court lawyer for everyone all day. That is good to know. If I ever commit a crime, I will call you. I don't know if is that an offer? Cool. Get her a hotel. Nah, it's not that bad. Anyway, take care. Peace, guys.